This is Radar for On the Radar Tape Blog, coming at you with another show, MLB observations of the 2025 season for the World Series. Let's start off with some box score observations. Dodgers did the whole Ohtani 1-2 for a lot of the season. In the World Series, they moved Betts to fourth. It paid off. I've been saying this for a while, that if, let's say, you intentionally walk Ohtani and they get Betts out, yes, you got to face Freddie Freeman or Will Smith, but what happens after that? It's a lot of question marks, so moving around the lineup probably helped them win the World Series. Emmett Sheehan, they converted him to be a reliever in the second half of the season for the playoffs. Sasaki, they converted him to a reliever at the end of the season for the playoffs, and some of those games have worked out. Kershaw, they just wanted him on the roster so it didn't look weird, so he's a lefty. And some teams can get away with this. You can pitch Glasnow, Sell, and Yamamoto, guys who have only pitched a few days ago in World Series starts out of the bullpen, and it works out for them. Tommy Edman, one of the position change was they moved him to center field for Miguel Rojas, and Rojas proved to be the right move the last two games. They do the whole losing a DH because of Ohtani. They move Will Smith from the cleanup or the fifth spot to the second. I don't really agree with that. Kike Hernandez playing center field, and then one of the games of the World Series, Alex Call played left field when Alex Call is actually a natural-born outfielder. Blue Jays, Springer leading off, and I know he's got this record for hits like RBIs and home runs in Blue Jays history and in the postseason. But imagine if he was in the middle of the lineup driving in runs, because that would have been way more helpful. Schneider playing the outfield when he's on an outfielder, and Barger moved to the outfield when they did some maneuvering, and he came up offensively. But I think they liked having Ernie Clement and IKF in the infield, and a couple of times Bo Bichette DH. But with Springer also not 100%, they can't play him in the outfield, so they played Bo at second base, and I kind of took away from their defense, because offensively he was great. Marshall made some good plays in center field, but as they talked about after that surgery, he's one of the worst arms in center field, and he couldn't throw anyone out at home. Jimenez playing shortstop was his actual position, which is nice to see. Vlad batting third for most of the World Series was good, but there were some days he batted second. Savage and Bieber, guys who have started games in the World Series, and they pitched in Game 7. Well, Savage, they kept him in a little bit too long, and he gives up a home run. And, of course, Hoffman was the one that tied the game, but Bieber gave up a run too. Not every team are the Dodgers that you can use all your starting pitchers who had just started a day or two ago to be in the bullpen, because you're never going to get the exact same result. Chris Bassett has been a reliever the whole playoffs since he's been on the roster, and he's been fine. Eric Lauer also used as a reliever for pretty much the whole entire playoffs, maybe the last month of the season. Those are things that made sense. What's the point of having relievers in a bullpen if you're just going to go, let's go to my starting pitchers here and there, and then guess what happens? They had pitched too many innings at the start of this year. They threw too many pitches. They didn't have enough days off. That's not their rhythm, and you see what happens here. It didn't work out for everyone using their starting pitchers. And then Nathan Luke's batting second. That's where he belongs. Because I will say that's the World Series. There hasn't been a Game 7 since the Nationals won the World Series in 2019, I think. So it was exciting. This is a playoff series. This is the playoff where the Tigers and the Mariners went extra innings and they won all the games. It's also a World Series. The Brewers just got swept right away from the Dodgers, and the Dodgers and Phillies played in the first round. And it didn't go the max amount of games, but we all kind of wish it was the National League Championship Series because they both were more talented teams. As a White Sox fan, I don't like the Blue Jays because the White Sox have some horrors in Rogers Center. Ignore my Cubs winter hat because I worked there. So I got to work some Cubs postseason games, which I'd never done, which was pretty cool. But in Game 1, surprised that the Blue Jays put up 11 runs, and they took Snell out, and they won 11-4. That was one of the surprises. In Game 2, the Dodgers came back to win 5-1. A lot closer a game because Yamamoto, again, incredible pitching complete, one complete game and almost going a complete game in both these playoffs, and then he comes in the bullpen and does a Madison Bumgarner, Randy Johnson, and he just completely shuts down the other team. And then the Dodgers win a close one, 6-5 in Game 3, but that was because it went 18 innings, which the World Series hasn't seen in a while. And they get a walk-off home run, and they win. In those extra innings, every team is trying to swing for the fences. I kept suggesting, why don't you get on base, bunt the runner over, because the Blue Jays have guys who know how to bunt, like Ernie Clement and Andres Jimenez and all this other stuff, and you're just like, okay, cool. Why didn't they do that? And then the Dodgers, who have more home run hitters, got the walk-off. So that was an incredible game to watch, 18 innings. I only watched the last 9, because I was at work. And then game 4, the Blue Jays came back and won 6-2. Ohtani wasn't as good as he was supposed to be. And then the Blue Jays completely dominated the Dodgers in that 6-1 game in game 5. And they're like sitting pretty 3-2, and they just need to win one more game, right? Well, I stayed home on Halloween to watch the game, and you know what happened? The Dodgers throw out Addison Barger second base on a very shallow ball, which he should have stayed on the bag for. Barger also got the raw deal because when his ball hit the wall, it dropped straight down and went underneath into the thing, and the Dodgers were like, "Yeah, that's a dead ball." What are the odds if the ball hit anywhere else on the wall and they weren't able to, and it didn't stop and it was still moving around? Ernie Clement would have scored, and that would have made a difference. Then there wouldn't have been the situation where Barger would have been picked off second base because he would have been a trip at third base. It was very close play in Game 7 when the ball was hit to Rojas if the runner was safe and Will Smith was on the bag. That's another one. These plays here and here that just don't go your way with the bounce. And the Blue Jays should have won Game 6 and won the World Series. And then in Game 7, they have the lead. Jeff Hoffman, who a lot of people were like, he's a former starting pitcher. He had one really good year with Philly. He hasn't been the most healthy in his career. Why give him all that money when you have Jordan Romano, a 2-time All-Star? He just hasn't been healthy. We'll throw out the Romano part for now. But Hoffman comes in the 8th inning, and then he gives up in the 9th. Like, too many innings for this guy. He's the real reason why the Blue Jays lost. It's not about them going extra innings and losing. It's not about who gave up the run extra innings or any runs previously in the game. It was on him. He's the closer. They paid him all this money. He was supposed to come in and win the World Series for them, and they did not. Dodgers, Miguel Rojas was one of the most unlikely guys to hit a home run because he's in there for his defense and making contact. And they kept talking about you can't let him get on base because then Ohtani's going to come up. You know what? I would have rather you just let Rojas, maybe if you walked Rojas by accident and Ohtani comes up and then Ohtani hits a home run, you're like, oh, cool. That's what's supposed to happen. Baseball is not scripted. And that's where moments like Miguel Rojas coming up with this clutch home run, and then Will Smith and Max Muncy each hitting home runs to help them win the game when Muncy had been in a slump. But you know Max Muncy's a former All-Star. He's going to hit a home run. It's like when Mookie Betts moved down the 4th spot and he drove in runs. You knew at some point Mookie Betts was a veteran. He was going to do that. So I just think the strategy of the Blue Jays trying to copy the Dodgers and throw all their starting pitchers out there like Savage and Bieber was probably not the best route, because not everyone has Snell, Yamamoto, and Glasnow to go throw out there, and they somehow are amazing. You have relievers that you should have probably used in this game instead, but you're just like, nah, I'm going to go with the starting pitchers. And that's cool to go with Shane Bieber in extra innings, but I don't know about the Trey Savage move and having Jeff Hoffman come in the 8th inning, because Chris Bassett comes in and pitch 1 inning. He gives up a run. Cool. He's been a reliever. That's not a big deal. But Savage going 1.2 innings, he gives up a home run. And then Hoffman gives up a home run. Like, these are things that they probably could have avoided because they still probably had other pitchers they could have used. The Dodgers are that team that has a whole trove of relievers. The Blue Jays had relievers like Rodriguez and Lauer and Garland and Varland, who they already used, and Flaherty and Fisher. Like, they had guys they probably could have used instead of Savage. But I think that's the real crucial mistake, is that the Blue Jays thought they could compete with the Dodgers of taking their starting pitchers on a short rest and all the innings they pitch and throwing them in the bullpen, and then it just doesn't work out. The Dodgers didn't have a closer, which is why they made Sasaki their closer, but the Blue Jays have a closer, and he's the reason why they kind of lost. So I feel like the Blue Jays in 2 games, 6 and 7, could have won the World Series, and they did not. At the beginning of the year, I knew the Dodgers would probably repeat. I said that at the beginning of the playoffs. I said that in each round, the Dodgers would probably win the World Series. I just didn't think it would look like, well, the Dodgers are going to be eliminated in the 6th game, or they're going to lose in the Game 7 like that. And they did not. They proved that because of all this attrition, that you have all these talented players with resumes. They're all going to show up and do what they're supposed to do. Like, they put Pages, even though he had a terrible postseason, in center field, and he made a great play. Rojas, who hasn't started in a few rounds, he makes great plays and he hits a home run. Like, Dave Roberts had guys who have a resume to go and do the things that they're eventually going to do, like Max Muncy waking up. So that's why I was like, you can't count the Dodgers out. They have all these resumes for these position players, and their starting pitchers are really talented. And yes, they didn't have Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates and a bunch of other relievers, so they went with a lot of starters. But the thing is, they've been doing that all postseason. The Blue Jays only started like, we're going to do this in Game 7. We're going to use our starter. That kind of fell the strategy. John Schneider kind of left a lot of guys in his lineup instead of pinch hitting for them in games, especially when Jimenez wasn't hitting earlier, and you had, Straw coming up to bat and IKF coming up to bat. There's a lot of times in this World Series he didn't use pinch hitter, and he probably should have. And George Springer, he's a good player, but they played pretty well in the 2 games he didn't play. And Bo Bichette was offensively great at shortstop, and you had IKF at second base. Like moving around Vlad and some of the other guys. Some of those mistakes people will question, but at least you could say this now. The Blue Jays, despite being a last-place team last year, surprisingly won the AL East and went to the World Series and almost won it. So a lot of people like myself, I could be wrong about that. But yeah, I haven't had this much fun watching a World Series with an 18-inning game, an extra inning game, the end game 7, all those extra inning improbable back and forth games between Detroit and Seattle before it was Seattle and Toronto. Like, wow. And this was a really good playoffs, minus the Dodgers sweeping the Brewers. Thank you again for listening to another show MLB Observation of the 2025 season World Series edition. Just letting you heads up, we're now going to start doing MLB Hot Stuff off-season videos. In the next couple of days, I'll find a time to get all the notes from any transactional moves or coaching moves, things like that. Manager hire to go in more detail. It's coming soon. So thanks for listening to Radar on the Radar Table blog, MLB Observations. I'm Radar. See you guys next time.